In this container we have our Yukon Gold. And you gotta tell me, who doesn't love the possibility of finding some buried gold? Guten Yardening, everybody! Well, it is the beginning of July and it's time for touring season. We have so much growing in our garden right now. So many different varieties, so many different methods of growing. And today for our garden tour, I want to take you on a very specific and focused tour of the potatoes that we have growing in and around our property. And the reason I want to do that is to hopefully give you some inspiration on some different ways that you can attempt to grow potatoes wherever you are. So today, let's take a look at some of the varieties and some of the methods we're using to get the most potatoes out of this small growing space. Now, one of the things you're probably going to hear us do in this video is to reference some of the other content and other videos that we've released that are more in depth about some of these things that I'm going to show you. And so if you'd like to check those out and learn a little bit more, please be our guest. Now, this is a potato tower, and this was inspired by our friend at Geeky Gardens. Now, we have a full-length video where we show you just how we set up this GreenStalk garden. It's really simple, and there's also a link in the description that shows you where you can purchase one of these. This is the original GreenStalk. Each of these tiers is 10 inches in depth, and we figure this is perfect for potatoes. We might even be able to get away with the other version, which is 7 inches in depth, but we're trying this one out for the first time. And again, one of the cool things about seeing all these different varieties of potatoes side by side is you can see just how different the leaves all look. This blue potato at the bottom, look at that beautiful blue in the middle. This is a blue Adirondack. This is the white potato. This is a superior white potato. It's a Kennebec potato. And then we have our red LaSoda here in the middle with the bigger leaves. And so it's going to be fascinating to watch this grow, and also even better to harvest it. Just another way that we're trying to improve the amount of space that we have. Now, last year we grew potatoes in grow bags and we didn't really have the success that we wanted. And I can't really say 100% why that is. Maybe something to do with inconsistent watering. I mean, there are probably other factors, but what we did have success with last year was growing sweet potatoes in plastic bins just like these. Due to the success that we had with our sweet potatoes, we thought, well, why not try potatoes in here? Now, granted, they're from a different family, but you can see these are actually performing well so far. Now, we planted these and they're going to take a little bit longer. This particular variety is a russet potato, so it is a late season potato. Now, as I walk through all of these potatoes, one thing you should know is that in all the varieties that we chose, we did so to have a mixture of early, middle, and then late potatoes. One of the other things to notice about this particular type of container, and I'll show you our other container potatoes in a second, is that we have the level of the mix that we have them in pretty low from the top, at least initially. But you can also hopefully see that we've been coming in and adding more of the mix as these have been growing. You know, as we get these indeterminate varieties of potatoes, we want to improve the yield by adding soil to cover this stem material. Remember, potatoes are modified stem material. And so for our indeterminate varieties, if we continue to add soil up the stem, we should see more growth coming out of those, just like this russet variety here. Now, in terms of other containers we're growing potatoes in, we also have these black containers, which were very successful for us last year when it came to growing sweet potatoes. Now, we didn't want to remove space from our sweet potatoes, so over the winter we actually purchased a whole bunch more of these. These are these 19-gallon black containers. This is a food-safe plastic. All the plastic we're using is, of course, food safe. But we did the same thing as we did with the gray containers, where we have the soil mix here a little bit lower than the top of the container. And as these, and these are our Adirondack blue, as they continue to grow, we'll continue to add soil to them. Now, I mentioned this in an earlier video, but these Adirondack blue potatoes, which we are super excited for, were given to us by one of our community members. And we're really appreciative of that and being able to put these in the ground and just really grow and experiment with varieties we've never tried before. I was watching Dan over at Dan Permaculture Food Forest harvest potatoes that he had grown for the first time ever from a couple of different methods, and it was really awesome to see the excitement. But then I asked him in the comment which method, like which growing area was his favorite, that he think did the best, and he had a really clear answer for that. Now, I'm not going to spoil anything from his videos. I'm going to tell you that you should just go over and take a look at them and see what his potato harvest looked like, and you can understand in part why we're growing in different mediums. We also did a video earlier on about planting Magic Molly purple potatoes in these blue bins. And this is what you love to see when you come out here. These are our bees pollinating our Magic Molly purple potatoes. Now, this is supposed to be a late season potato, and so we've planted this probably the earliest of any of the other potatoes. This was our first one to go on the ground, and one of the things that I've noticed as we've watched it grow over time, and that is so much fun to do, to watch these grow over time. One of the things I've noticed about this is just how thick the stems on these are, and I don't know if that's really indicative of how big these potatoes are going to get or how well they're doing, but the stems overall, everything about this screams to me that it is bigger, larger than anything else that we've had out here, and everything flowered at the same time. Look at these beautiful flowers on here. I mean, that is the sign that everything is working below the surface and that we're getting some really good growth. Now, I have two more types of potatoes to show you still today, and I'm saving the Ruth Stout method for last. I'm really excited about it, and I just want to show it to you last. But these are where we are now with our volunteer potatoes. Now, we did two different things with these volunteer potatoes based on the comments left to us by those of you who have had volunteer potatoes before. One of the things that was suggested to us, and you can see these volunteer potatoes are also flowering, was that many of you had them come up, but then you didn't really get a good harvest from them. Well, take a look at this. You see this right here? This is a potato berry. And I know we've seen this before in other videos, but if you've never noticed this before, this potato berry is where the true potato seed is. And the true potato seed, if we were to plant this again, would grow something unlike the parent. Now, I'm going to open this up really quickly so you can see, if you've never seen them before, what true potato seeds look like, because, you know, typically we plant from seed potatoes. But look inside of here, hundreds and hundreds of these seeds from this potato berry. Now, remember, potatoes are from the nightshade family, so if you eat this, you're going to be sick. You don't want to do that. Now, if we were to take these and harvest these seeds and plant them, and we've talked about this in previous videos, what we would get as an end result would be a plant probably genetically different than the parent plant. I mean, there might be the possibility that it's less disease resistant. It could also look different. You know, there's not a very good chance that it would be the same as the parent plant, but we are going to still try to experiment with some of these. And I've got a couple more potato berries on here, so I'm going to leave those for later. So here's what we did with some of the other volunteer potatoes. You can see we've got these in, this looks to be a 10-gallon grow bag here, somewhere between an 8 or a 10-gallon grow bag. And we've transplanted them. Now, it's been over a month ago, and they have been growing really well. So it'll be interesting for us to see what is the difference between these potatoes and the ones that we left in the ground over there. Now these particular ones haven't begun to flower yet, so we've still got some time left on those before I think we're going to see much tuber development underneath. But we now have two different bags of these. We were able to collect enough to have two different bags of these volunteer potatoes growing in here. So 2 bags of volunteer potatoes. We'll see how well they perform compared to the ones that we intentionally planted this year. And that brings us to our Ruth Stout potatoes. And hopefully, I'm going to pull right down to ground level here. Hopefully you can see just how deep this hay is now. We have been adding hay, I would say once a week or so as these have grown. And you know, one of the things I noticed, we're about to flower here. One of the things I've noticed about this year's Ruth Stout potatoes compared to last year is that the greens are a deeper green this year. So one of the things we talked about when setting up this modified Ruth Stout bed was that year over year, we should see improvement as this hay starts to decompose. Now I'm going to head all the way down into here, and I'm going to grab, and I'm way down in there now, I'm going to grab some of what's underneath the surface here, and you can see it's breaking down really nicely. Now, one of the things I've noticed as I take another look at what's down below the surface here, last year when we grew in grow bags, we didn't have the size or the quantity of tubers that I really wanted. And as I've been researching about things that can stunt or really diminish your returns on potatoes, one of the things they talked about was excess heat. For the last couple of weeks, we have had some tremendously hot temperatures, upper 80s, 90s plus. And one of the studies I read said that when you have those high temperatures, especially early on in potato development, it can cause there to be a great reduction in overall production. But what I notice as I dig my hand down in here is that this is a really, really cool, temperature-wise, cool area here underneath all this hay. And not just that, it's retaining a ton of moisture. So the leaves themselves can handle that heat, but it's the root area, it's the area where the potatoes are developing that struggle more from that heat. So this method is creating a really great bit of insulation that's holding in that moisture that they need so much, and also keeping the temperatures down. So I'm wondering if, again, as this bed continues to improve year over year, if we don't start seeing better production out of this than even in our raised containers, which don't have that same level of insulation. Well, one more thing I should mention about this is there are 3 different varieties of potatoes in the Ruth Stout bed. We have our Mega Chip, we have our Red LaSoda, and we have our Yellow Fin. And so those 3 are supposed to be early or early mid-season. So even though they're at about the same time frame in terms of harvest, you can see that the Mega Chip potato is actually growing a little bit faster and seems to be flowering before the others, but the others are not far behind. All of our varieties are getting really close to flowering. And again, the stems are much taller than they appear because we have them covered in so much hay. One of the questions we ask ourselves every year is what worked, and then of course what didn't work, or what can we do to improve or experiment further. So, we're not just growing potatoes in all these different methods because we want to experiment, we're also growing them in different methods to find the way that works best for us. And for some of these, depending on where you live, you might find one method might be more effective in terms of space, in terms of sunlight, temperature, etc. So if I live in an area that is massively hot all the time, and I want something to keep the plant down below the surface a little bit cooler and retain some of that moisture, maybe Ruth Stout's the way to go. If I live in the 2nd or 3rd floor of a building and I have a balcony, then perhaps the GreenStalk is the way to go to limit that footprint, but to also give us the possibility of a ton of potatoes. And so we're out here trying new things so that you can experience them through us and maybe get some inspiration for growing your own. Well, we hope you enjoyed this potato tour and found some of that inspiration to grow your own. And if you did, don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, remember to share and subscribe, and most importantly, remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.